tonight, uncertainty over looming U.S. tariffs continues following Donald Trump's inauguration. That story and
there's more fallout from all the turmoil last year in the fishing industry. This time, there's a big fracture on the processing side.
We've seen that corporation kind of go rogue a little bit compared to the other companies in that organization.
I'm Terry Roberts. I'll have that story coming up.
Newfoundland hockey legend George Faulkner died over the weekend. We'll talk about his legacy and what he meant to the sport.
George walked into a room, everybody said, look, that's George Faulkner.
That's coming up on Here and Now.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Welcome to Here and Now. Many people in this province closely followed the events in the U.S. today, wondering what a new president might mean to them. Some are preparing for tariffs. Others have adopted a wait-and-see approach. Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
The 47th U.S. president was sworn in today with a promise of America first.
The golden age of America begins right now.
But people here who fish for lobster, cod, and crab are worried. They fear Trump will make good on his threat to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods.
We're very concerned, especially when it comes to snow crab. Nearly 90% of our snow crab goes into the United States. So a 25% tariff we see it as being absolutely devastating.
The FFAW is applauding Premier Andrew Furey for his response to this threat.
We are very happy with the Premier, what he's been doing, pulling all industries together for that roundtable. How he's been addressing the issue and the potential threat in the media has been absolutely fantastic, and keeping us all in the loop. Those open lines of communication, I think, are going to be important as we move forward.
If there are tariffs, Street says the union expects there will be government support for the hardest hit industries.
We have opened up those conversations, and again, it goes back to if there are retaliatory tariffs, where does that money go? Does it go to the industries that need the assistance the most? And we think that the fishing industry would fall into that category.
Others, like those in the tech industry, say they were taken by surprise when Trump first mentioned a tariff.
Certainly very shocking and a lot of concern initially.
But now some of them are waiting to see what happens.
As a startup, we're just focused on finding that product market fit, kind of trying to ignore all the details and just focus on making a great product. So I think for some of the startups out there, the best advice is to just ignore it for now and see what plays out in the future.
So I guess right now we're just in a wait and see mode to see exactly how this plays out. Is it 25? Is it 15? Is it 10? And if it's on the lower end, how can we absorb that and share the risk when it comes to the processing sector and the harvesting sector?
Earlier today, an official with the new U.S. administration confirmed to Reuters news agency that Trump will hold off on tariffs for now and instead direct agencies to, quote, investigate and remedy persistent trade deficits and address unfair trade and current policies by other nations. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
The ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas began yesterday after more than a year of fighting in the region. It's a deal that's being watched cautiously around the world and here in this province. The CBC's Abby Cole has that story.
After months of relentless bombings and casualties, a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel went into effect yesterday. As hostages start being released and political prisoners return home, members of both Jewish and Palestinian communities in this province watch from afar with mixed feelings. Dean Barnes has loved ones in Israel, and despite the deal, he worries about them.
If, God forbid, one of my loved ones was a hostage, I would move heaven and earth to get them home. But there is a brighter future. It's possible, as I said with my grandfather. And when it came to Nazi Germany, I've been there. I speak the language fluently. I have friends from there. It's possible, but there has to be a change in the mentality of the population.
Majed Kraishi left Palestine as a child. He says the past 15 months have been some of the worst in Palestinian history.
Like most of us, if not all of us, we feel a happiness, the fact that this is happening now, the genocide is coming hopefully to an end. We feel mourning and sadness because this happened after 15 months, nearly 470 days.
Since the beginning of the war in October 2023, community group Palestine Action (YYT) has organized weekly protests in St. John's, demanding a free Palestine. Now that a ceasefire has been achieved, organizers are feeling hope, but also grief, and they plan to continue their activism.
I do know that the reason that this ceasefire happened and the reason that Palestine still exists is because of the resilience and the resistance of the Palestinian people who persisted through 470 days of genocide with joy, with beauty, with love for one another, with solidarity.
Whether this deal will bring lasting peace to the region and whether the return of hostages and release of prisoners will go as planned, there is some doubt among those who have been studying the region.
Don't get your hopes too high. Let's all be pleasantly surprised maybe by phase 5 or 6 that, puts in place a pathway towards Palestinian statehood or a pathway towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict. But we've been here many times before and we're still here.
Abby Cole, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there was more fallout today from turmoil in the fishery last spring. A major seafood producer has cut ties with the trade association that represents most companies in this province. And the fisheries union is also weighing in. Here now's Terry Roberts reports.
Quincy Fisheries is parting ways with the Association of Seafood Producers, and it dropped a metaphorical hand grenade on its way out the door. This media release hit newsrooms first thing Monday morning, with Quincy taking a flamethrower to the ASP, saying it would no longer tolerate ASP's strong-arming and mistreatment. Quincy also accused the ASP of making false claims and attacking its own members. It all stems from these protests early last year. Harvesters were demanding more freedom in how they sell their landings. One outcome of all that turmoil was an agreement between the ASP and the Fisheries Union that seafood companies would reveal their sales data to a third-party auditor to ensure that harvesters received their fair share of the revenue. But last fall, the ASP brought a complaint before the Labour Board, saying Quincy was refusing to turn over its sales receipts. The dispute slowed the audit process, and harvesters did not begin receiving settlement payments until December. The ASP eventually withdrew its Labour Board complaint against Quincy, but the damage was done. Quincy disagrees that it was required to disclose its confidential sales records, and now it wants nothing more to do with the ASP. Quincy says it will continue to purchase fish from harvesters at or above fair market value. Quincy is owned by Royal Greenland, which is a crown corporation of the Danish government. The company has operations throughout Newfoundland.
We've seen that corporation kind of go rogue a little bit compared to...
The Fisheries Union president has lost trust in Quincy.
We don't feel that company has been acting in good faith in quite a while. So to see them having internal struggles within their own association, I don't think anybody's surprised.
Despite the dispute, the union does not believe harvesters were shortchanged. Wharf prices started out last year at $3 per pound and eventually settled at $3.75. Which is what Quincy was paying throughout the season. Prices were driven by more competition as the market opened up to new and smaller companies. Meanwhile, the union wants stronger language in any future profit-sharing agreements to avoid similar disputes.
I think both sides would agree that there are significant improvements needed.
Quincy Fisheries has declined an interview request, and ASP Executive Director Jeff Loader is not commenting on what this might mean for his organization. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The organization behind the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Festival is in financial trouble. The Folk Arts Society is laying off 5 staff members due to a lack of funds, hoping the move will ensure its future financial stability. The Society's executive director says rising costs mean there's tough decisions to make, but they're meant to be temporary measures. The Society offers year-round programming in addition to the annual festival at Bannerman Park.
We're still planning the festival. That's completely underway. So that when I say this is a temporary layoff, it is so that we can just get our funding sources sorted so that when they're ready to be released, we're ready to go. And at that point, I'm bringing the staff back because they're fantastic. And I can't do it without them.
One of the province's hockey legends died over the weekend. George Faulkner made an impact on every hockey level he played, both locally and abroad, and he's being fondly remembered by the hockey community. Troy Turner has the story.
It may not be frozen here today, but back in the 1930s and 40s, the Exploits River was a bustling hockey rink. And of all the people who learned to skate here, there were none more well known than George Faulkner and his brothers.
He was an outstanding man. I'm very glad to have had the relationship that I had with him for 66 years. And many people across the province will say the same thing. He was a man for all seasons, George Faulkner was. And when it came to hockey, there was nobody better, in my opinion.
Faulkner began his senior hockey career at age 15, here with the Bishops Falls Woodsmen. It wasn't long before the sport took him out of province, though. First with the junior Quebec Citadels, and eventually to the Shawinigan Falls Cataracts, a Montreal Canadiens affiliate where he spent 4 seasons. In the 1950s, the Canadiens were in the middle of a dynasty, with Montreal winning 5 cups throughout the decade.
We often wonder if any other franchise of George would have been in the NHL, and I certainly think he would have been. George and his younger brother Alec turned to senior hockey in this province and started the Conception Bay Seabees. Back then, Douglas Morris was 10.
He was a great guy, a great personality, friendly, and he really, wanted to come to Harbour Grace and set up his hockey career and get the Seabees on the go. And he had his brother Alec with him, who was no slouch either on the ice. And after that, the rest is history. I mean, he was just a wonderful man, and he maintained that personality right through his whole life.
The Faulkner touch paid off as the Seabees made an impact immediately and won 4 Herder trophies in a 7-year period.
Stadiums in all these communities was packed every night, so there wasn't very much else on the go then in Newfoundland in the wintertime. It was all pre-internet, and the Trans-Canada Highway hadn't even been completed. The boys would travel from out here in Conception Bay by train.
At age 32, Faulkner represented Canada at the 1966 World Hockey Championships. He skated to a bronze medal and collected 13 points along the way. The accolades continued back home as George and his brothers proved a dominant force in senior hockey. In total, George was part of 9 Herder winning teams.
He'd be most remembered as being a member of a legendary family and standing up in his own merit for what he accomplished in the game. I think there is not going to be a time goes by when people don't think about his accomplishments with the Seabees and what he did in senior hockey here. For breaking down barriers and getting Newfoundlanders recognized and seen in the circuits back in the 50s and 60s as being good players and having the ability to go further in the game.
While he may be remembered for his accolades on the ice, there's also a larger-than-life personality that will also be missed.
His accomplishments in the game, particularly when he played for the Seabees and senior hockey circuits here in Newfoundland and Labrador, but the impact he has had here in our province, the communities of central Newfoundland, Grand Falls, Windsor, and Bishop Falls in particular, I think are going to be lasting legacies for us to really cherish.
George is a legend. I'm glad I knew a legend. I don't know many. And I'm glad to have met him and Alec and Jack. I extend condolences to all of them and really appreciate the opportunity to be able to say a few words about this icon of Newfoundland hockey and just a generally good man all around.
According to friends and the hockey community, Faulkner will be remembered for many things. A pioneer in the hockey community, a gifted player, a leader, a family man, and to most all who met him, a good guy. Troy Turner, CBC News, Bishops Falls.
Well, it certainly felt like a spring day for a good chunk of the island this afternoon, thanks to this area of low pressure, lots of southerly flow bringing that mild air in, but there is some cold air on the backside of this system, a big ridge of high pressure dipping that cold air all the way down to the southern states in some cases. So we are going to see some of the coldest air of the season that we have seen so far across parts of Labrador. That will start tonight and continue for the next little bit. This cold air is also going to bring the potential for some snow squalls over the next couple of days as this cold air will continue. I'll get into all of the details coming up a little later.
The province's recreation minister says he's confident the Ac Arena renovation will be completed in time for this year's Summer Games. Steve Crocker gave this progress update earlier today during an announcement on sports funding for the Year of Sport. 5 different funding programs will aim to increase access to sport in the province, including an allocation of $10,000 for pools and arenas to provide free swimming and skating. 2025 has been named Year of Sport to align with the province hosting the Canada Games in August. The Ac Arena has been closed since September 2023 and is being renovated for the Games.
You know, when you start to open up a 50-year-old facility and do repairs, there's a lot of questions around it. And, so obviously our confidence has built and built and built to we're to the point now where Memorial assures us that it will be open. But I think when you have a project of that magnitude and a reno, anybody who's ever done a renovation knows that you never know where you are or what you are when you start. But, kudos to Memorial University and the work that they've done and the diligence that, along with their contractor to get us where we are. And we're very confident that we'll have people in the pool in August.
And staying with sports, for hockey fans in Corner Brook, it was a special night at the Civic Centre on Saturday as the Corner Brook Royals retired number 15 in honor of former player Ed Kiersey. Kiersey clocked over 225 games on the ice with the club, and he was on the team that won the first Allen Cup for the province.
The man of the hour, the star of the show, Ed Kiersey.
Like I say, it's more than just a game. It's quite the life. I started when I was 9 years old. I don't even know what year that would have been. I guess back in the mid to late 70s, I guess. And I played, I guess we call back in the heyday up till '89 with the Royals, and then they become a defunct league for a little while until it started up again. So back till '89, I guess. And then I played a few more years up until 2002. We had a lot of fun. We done a lot of winning in my time with the Royals. Back in the '80s, it was a big event in the city, senior hockey. A time where they used to bring in a lot of players, so the locals had to be pretty good to play back in those days. So it was really good to just mix them with the local guys and the import players that they used to bring in. 2 things sticks out in my mind. I guess the year 1985 when we were hosting the Allen Cup in Corner Brook. It probably wasn't a very favorable ending at that year, but we had Thunder Bay down 3-0, and they come back and beat us 4 straight. to win the Allen Cup. So then the next year we reversed it and we won the Allen Cup the next year in '86. So that was pretty memorable. That's the first one for any team in Newfoundland. They had competed in years past. I remember in the early '80s, Stephenville competed for it in Stephenville, but we were the first ones in '86. Well, I guess nobody really thinks about it, but I guess when some of my peers, guys that I play with, like over on the wall over here's Cormy and Matt, they're guys that I played with back in the day. So it was nice. It was a nice feeling when I learned that it would be going up. Well, hockey is more than just a game. I have 2 kids who played hockey. I've coached my kid all the way up through. I've coached many kids in minor hockey and that, and it's like I say, it's more than just a game. It's quite the life.
Well, to a different kind of game now. A locally made video game has been nominated for 2 Canadian Game Awards. Moving Houses, a game created and designed by Gordon Little right here in the province, is up for awards in 2 categories, one for Best Technology and Innovation, and the second for Best Performance for music used in the game, which was composed by Ben Burns. The Canadian Game Awards were launched in 2020. Little will find out if he won on February 15th. Classic rock fans in the province will have something to cheer about this fall. Southern rock legends Leonard Skinner are making a return trip to this province as part of an international tour that celebrates 50 years of the Florida-based band, best known for this song and Freebird. The band has made a few stops on the island before their tour kicks off next month and will take them to Europe, the US, and across Canada, including the September 25th show at the Mary Brown Centre in St. John's.
So here's what we've gathered from talking to local residents.
I spoke with a renter who's facing eviction this fall.
It is not for the weak of stomachs.
What does it mean for you to be able to give that advice and to know that you've helped?
Don't look down.
If this is something that you didn't know about, let me tell you.
Heather Gillis, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
St. John's.
Corner Brook. Shaji, Innu First Nation.
Grand Falls, Windsor.
New West Valley, Newfoundland and Labrador.
Ashley, today felt like a spring day for a little while here in the east. I couldn't get over it. The sun came out for a little while and it was really mild outside.
Very mild. Still, quite mild here in the east as well. But, earlier we did see some rain, got rid of pretty much all of the snow that was on the ground. In most cases. Let's take a look at the rainfall numbers from today. So St. Albans picked up the most at 69.6 millimeters of rain. Bay Despair not far off that. And then pretty much anywhere from 10 to as much as 30 millimeters of rain, mainly falling for the east and along the southern areas of the island. That is different now, or we've pretty much seen an end to the showers for now. We are seeing some of the colder air sink a little bit further south, but that area of low pressure now headed off the coast of Labrador, but still bringing some fairly windy conditions for a good chunk of the island. Now we've got lots of cold air. I've been hinting at this since last week. That cold air sinking south as well. In fact, just to put this into perspective, along the Gulf of Mexico and then parts of Florida may see some snow over the next couple of days. For example, New Orleans hasn't seen any measurable snow since 2009 and could pick up close to, 5 or even 6 centimeters of snow over the next couple of days. So definitely a big pocket of cold air. And like I said, starting to move in across parts of the island and Labrador. Minus 25 was the daytime high today in Lab City. So now we are way below where you should be sitting this time of year. And then temperatures topping out between 9 and 10 or even 11 and 12 degrees across the island. So certainly some very mild air out there. Still quite mild right now as well. Those winds 7 degrees, or rather the temperature 7 degrees. The winds are out of the southwest, gusting upwards of about 65 kilometers per hour. And we are going to continue to see some windy conditions as well. Don't have any radar up across Labrador, but certainly seeing some snow and that colder air moving in for the west coast, changing those showers to some flurries. But Environment Canada does have a winter storm warning in effect, as well as some snowfall warnings. And expecting that to continue as we head through tonight. Eventually those conditions will improve as we head into tomorrow morning. But we can definitely see some of that gusty winds, 98 kilometer per hour winds right now, gusting in Bonavista. Stephenville seeing a wind gust near 59, Burgeo at 80. And again, St. John seeing about 65 kilometers per hour. So there are wind warnings in place from the northern peninsula east all along the northeast coast. And those winds will ease at least below warning criteria as we head past midnight tonight. Temperatures now, we can see some of that cold air starting to move in for the west, down to about -3 in Corner Brook right now. And we will see those temperatures continue to drop east as we head through the night, but still right now 4 degrees in Gander, 5 in Terra Nova. And if we factor in that wind chill, feeling more like -10 for those of you in Corner Brook right now, and -37 is what it feels like in Lab City. So Environment Canada has a extreme cold warning in effect for you, and we're expecting those wind chills tonight to be fairly cold, because your temperature is going down to -34. With those winds still gusting somewhere around 50 kilometers per hour. And as those temperatures drop across the island as well, where we're seeing these gusty winds, the wind chills are going to be cold tonight. So wind chills up across Labrador, particularly in the west, likely near -48. Across the island, we're looking at wind chills dipping into the minus teens, even in St. John's, about -10. And as we head into tomorrow afternoon, these cold temperatures are still going to stick around. So we're still going to see those wind chills in the minus teens, even -20s and -30s up across parts of Labrador. As far as snow squalls go, because we've got this colder air, snow squall watches are in effect from Gros Morne all the way along southern areas of the island. And we're expecting these snow squalls to continue over the next couple of days, really through Thursday. We could be talking about those snow squalls developing. So once they do develop, we will see those warnings. But we can really see that timing out quite nicely here on the future tracker. And, you know, as always, when we see this flow, we could see some of those squalls reach the northern portion of the Avalon. They will be you'll drive in and out of them likely, and they shouldn't amount to too much. But I mean, by the time we get to the Thursday timeframe, we could be talking about 20, 30, even 40 centimeters of snow for parts of the west coast. I'll get into the long range forecasts a little later.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, turning anger into action when it comes to recent political trends. That's the focus of a panel happening tonight at the St. John's Farmers Market. It's an event held by the nonprofit organization Equal Voice, and some of the female politicians and activists on the panel stopped by the St. John's Morning Show.
I think recently we've seen a rise in frustration, political frustration, especially online, with everything that's happening, not only here in the province and country, but also, you know, south of the border. So we really got this idea because we wanted folks to understand how this frustration is useful because we can turn it into action, and what tools are there through Equal Voice and other channels to take the things that you're passionate about and make meaningful change in our communities.
You have to deal with things. You have to experience the literal effects of things that you aren't able to effect in a political, tangible way. Even as a permanent resident, I'm still unable to do that. However, it's really important to acknowledge that all of the frustrations we have always been here. Black women, immigrant women, Indigenous women have always been saying these things, these systems are not fair. And even when it seems like it's fair for certain women, especially who are of the paler complexion, it doesn't, you know, it's not the same thing. So therefore, now that we have such a huge more, it's an ability for us to come together on it's true feminists and the true root and intersectionality of feminism in order to address these frustrations. So yeah, I think it's really important to do so.
Politics has been frustrating for a very, very long time, and I'm living that life. How have I seen the changes? Mm-hmm. Well, I was very excited to be a part of a council at St. John's in 2017, where we actually realized gender equity. Was it a done deal? Absolutely not. Just as Raven has talked about, you know, intersectional feminism goes way beyond that. We have a long way to go, but my concern right now on this very dark day that we are all facing in American politics is the fact that we here in little old St. John's are starting to see a move in regressing. And I personally, as a strong promoter of women and gender diversity in politics, are very concerned about who's stepping up in our election in October. So we need to think globally. Absolutely. That is certainly something that I really profess to do, but we have to act locally. So, but there have been positive changes, but you got to hold on to your hats because it doesn't last long unless we all stay involved.
For me, it is gender diversity in politics. So when I was found out that was my passion and that's where I wanted to see change, I found Equal Voice. And from there, I've been able to make the change that I want to see. Even if it's not immediate, like Sheila had said previously, little steps, we're getting there. And by hosting events like this, you can really see the change that you want to make. So I think it's about kind of putting yourself out there, taking a leap sometimes and finding that group, that organization that supports your beliefs. If not, be the change you want to see, right? You can do it. It's just about taking that leap.
Well, we are in the midst of cold and flu season right now, so we thought it would be a good time to check in with the province's Chief Medical Officer of Health to see what kind of illnesses are out there and what you should watch out for. Dr. Janice Fitzgerald joins me now. So we've been hearing anecdotally that there's a lot of respiratory illness on the go right now. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so we're certainly seeing, I mean, it's not unusual this time of year to see respiratory illnesses. I mean, that's the general trend. So we are seeing, you know, our usual suspects. So things like enterovirus and parainfluenza virus. We're also seeing flu start to creep up a little bit at this point.
A term that I've been hearing more of is walking pneumonia. I feel like it's only the past few years that has come up. Can you describe what walking pneumonia is?
Yeah, so it is a pneumonia that's caused by a bacteria. So it's not a virus, a respiratory virus, it's a respiratory bacteria. Mm-hmm. It's been around for a long, long time. Walking pneumonia is, I mean, I remember it from when I was, well, more years ago than I wanted to tell anybody. We've seen more of it this year than in previous years, and you know, that's not out of keeping with what we're seeing kind of globally and across the country as well. So it may be an effect of the pandemic and just not having any exposure over a couple of years, and so now we're seeing a little surge. We'll see what happens in future years with that. Generally, that one affects kids more than adults because you get exposed to it over time. You develop some immunity as well. So we see, the majority of cases are in that 5 to 12 year age range. So, but most of the time people do fairly well with it, which is why it's got the walking pneumonia as opposed to, ones that make you really sick and in bed. And
so people are still out and about and functioning, but they have walking
They
pneumonia.
may feel, unwell, and it does respond well to antibiotics. So, if you have any concerns about that, if you have a cough that's not getting better, if you have a cough with a fever, certainly check in with your primary care practitioner and see if you need any kind of treatment.
What should parents keep in mind if they have a sick child, and maybe parents who don't have a family doctor and their kid gets sick? At what point should they be like, okay, we should probably go to the Janeway?
Yeah, so, the majority of these respiratory viruses kids will get and they'll recover from very quickly. They don't usually get too sick with them. They may get a fever for the first day or two, but most of the time it will, subside fairly quickly. We would say if a child has a fever that's persistent, it's not getting better, if they become very lethargic, they're very tired, especially younger babies, if they become kind of difficulty feeding and get what we call floppy, so they're just not, they're not kicking and moving like they normally would. Those are things, signs that we would want you to seek medical attention for. But and certainly if there's anything that's really persistent, doesn't seem to be settling with your usual treatments, then you certainly should seek medical attention.
Okay, and we've seen a pretty dramatic uptick in norovirus in some other provinces. I've seen some headlines like over 200 cases at a university in Guelph. Are we seeing any norovirus here right now? Are there any concerns around that?
So once again, noroviruses are they're gastrointestinal viruses, so they cause vomiting, diarrhea, and they are exceptionally common around this time of year. We used to joke you'd never see a Christmas without a noro or some kind of a gastro, right? So it's not unusual to be seeing them at this time of year. I think in other areas, unfortunately, they've just gotten into a very closed population, and so they skyrocketed very quickly and easily, but it's not uncommon to see noro this time of year. So we are seeing some cases, and there's probably a few more this week than last week, but nothing out of what we would consider the ordinary for this time of year.
Right, and it's particularly nasty virus. And I know we talk about this a lot, particularly during COVID, about how to protect yourself, but I think it's worth rehashing.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get things like norovirus, if you don't want to get things like COVID, just remind us about some of the things that we should keep in mind.
So certainly washing your hands is very, very important, and you want to make sure you're keeping your hands clean, especially before you touch your face or your mouth. And if you're sick, especially if you have a fever, usually that means you're contagious, so stay home if you can. If that's not possible, consider wearing a mask to reduce your risk to other people. If you're at higher risk for certain respiratory diseases, certainly consider wearing a mask when you're out, when things are circulating. And obviously from a flu and COVID perspective, get vaccinated. Certainly not too late to get your flu shot, and that's available through public health clinics. You can book an appointment on our website, or you can check in with your pharmacist or family doc to see if they have flu vaccine to dispense. There's always something to be watching this time of year. We're keeping our eye on everything, and thankfully it seems to be a fairly average year, so we're hoping, our fingers are crossed, that's going to continue, but we're ready for anything.
All right, like the sound of that. Okay, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, as we heard earlier in the show, Donald Trump is back in the White House as the 47th President of the United States. His inauguration took place inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda because of frigid weather.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States. The golden age of America begins right now.
Trump got right into his agenda. Apart from tariff threats, he declared an emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border and promised to send back what he called millions of criminal aliens. He's also pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord and says the U.S. will take back control of the Panama Canal. On social issues, he says the U.S. will recognize only two genders, male and female. All of Canada is watching carefully as Donald Trump begins his second term. And while he hasn't imposed tariffs yet, that doesn't mean the threat has gone away. Olivia Stevanovich reports.
A feeling of trepidation hangs over the federal cabinet as members of the Prime Minister's most senior team gather here in Montebello, Quebec, for a retreat over the next 2 days. Their meetings entirely focused on Canada-U.S. relations and the impact that Donald Trump's new presidency might have on this country.
Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens.
In his inaugural address, Trump vowed to move ahead with tariffs and create the External Revenue Service, a new government agency to collect money from taxes on foreign countries. But Trump didn't mention Canada once in his speech, and he didn't sign an executive order to impose tariffs on Canadian goods either, buying Canadian officials more time to respond to whatever comes next.
I'm very happy to be here in Montebello today to dig in on issues facing Canadians here at this cabinet retreat.
Pas de tarif pour l'instant. Comment? Pas de tarif.
The Prime Minister was asked if the threat of tariffs is over for now. He responded, yes, for now. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and senior federal government officials say they are prepared to respond almost immediately if Trump follows through. They have a list of 10 American products that they've identified for counter tariffs, including Kentucky bourbon, orange juice, and washing machines. Canadian officials also say they are preparing two larger rounds of counter tariffs valued at $37 billion and $110 billion each. So the federal government taking a cautious approach as they watch every single move from this new administration carefully, wondering how long this reprieve will last. Olivia Stevanovich, CBC News, Montebello, Quebec.
Well, Canadian retailers are watching for additional U.S. tariffs on Chinese-made goods. Aritzia, Lululemon, and Canadian Tire are among businesses that manufacture products overseas and then sell them south of the border. The potential impact has some looking to shift their production out of China. Paula Jachek reports.
Making one pair of earrings takes a number of tiny pieces, and when trying to find those materials, one country feels almost unavoidable.
If I was trying to source things that weren't made from China, these shelves would be empty.
But as returning U.S. President Donald Trump threatens more tariffs on Chinese goods, retailers that can move production outside China are doing just that.
Knowing that there's going to be a transition in the first quarter of the year, we've already taken steps. I won't get into the percentage, but we've already taken steps to move more production out of China.
Brands like Aritzia, Lululemon, and Canadian Tire say they're in various stages of diversifying production. For some, it's a long-term plan.
What I can say right now is that the great majority of our product is manufactured outside of China.
For others, it's lately become more of a focus.
We've seen a pretty sizable shift in our, country of origin sourcing. Out of China just this year, alone.
Tariffs and political tension aren't the only factors. Companies are also concerned about textiles being made with forced labor.
We've had the normal forced labor issue and then the U.S.-China fight on top of that. And so that's why businesses are suddenly taking more extreme or extraordinary measures.
Still, trying to get away from China can be tough.
You want to have
a garment, you want to have the buttons, the zippers, the threads, the inner linings, the backings, all these myriad products that go into a piece of apparel. You can't get those everywhere.
Some countries, like Japan, have actually paid companies to help them diversify.
So companies that were leaving were like, oh, if you're going to hand me money, sure, I'll take it.
He says that's not necessarily the right move for Canada, but he hopes our country gets creative to help companies that want to leave make the switch. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
And as we heard earlier, this is the second day of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, and thousands of people in Gaza are making their way home through a sea of rubble. About 90% of more than 2 million residents there have been displaced during the 15-month war. Much needed humanitarian aid is flowing into the region as part of the deal. But aid workers say the scope of the destruction means major hurdles ahead. Meanwhile, the first phase of prisoners for hostages swap has been completed. Israel freed 90 Palestinian prisoners Sunday. That was in exchange for the release of 3 Israeli hostages by Hamas. Well, hopefully some people got to enjoy the warmer temperatures today because things are going to be changing pretty dramatically.
Yes, temperatures are going to drop like a rock tonight and then pretty much stay there for the next little bit, especially up across parts of Labrador. Let's take a look at what's going on for tomorrow. It's still going to be windy. It is going to be chilly. So your wind chills tomorrow afternoon will be in the minus teens, even minus 20s for parts of the island and up across Labrador. With your temperatures minus teens and minus 20s, your wind chills are going to be closer to the minus 30s and even the minus 40s through the afternoon. And we're also looking at that potential for some snow squalls. That will continue as well as we head into Wednesday. We can see that on the future tracker here with that onshore flow for the west coast and even some snow across the island through the day on Wednesday that aren't associated necessarily with some snow squalls, but a little bit of a disturbance that may move through. So we're going to keep an eye on that as well. And temperatures are going to stay cold. Pretty much what you see is what you get over the next couple of days with temperatures between -2 and -9, even -14 up across parts of the northern peninsula. And then Labrador, you're looking at temperatures in the minus teens and even the mid-minus 20s through the day. So again, the snow squall potential will continue even through Thursday, especially for the west coast, southern areas of the island, as well as the Burin Peninsula. May see those snow squalls quiet and cold again up across parts of Labrador as we head into the evening hours, or through the day, I should say, again. But we're going to start to see a little bit of relief from those temperatures, so into the minus teens for most of the big land. But again, moderating a little bit, but overall temperatures, again, aren't really moving a whole lot across the island. -6, -7 will be the daytime highs on Thursday. St. Anthony, you'll sit around -12 for the day. Now, as far as the snowfall amounts go, this takes us through Thursday afternoon. There is a potential for some significant snow if we do see some persistent snow squalls on the west coast, particularly in the higher elevations. We could see more than 30, even 40 centimeters of snow with this. Got to watch that for the Burin Peninsula and then for the Avalon. Again, with that snow on Wednesday, it could bring our snowfall amounts up closer to 10 centimeters and maybe even a little bit more in some of that higher terrain for that time frame. Now, as far as the long-range forecast goes, temperatures are going to be below zero for the time being, and overnight lows will be between -8 and -11. We're looking at some flurry activity, like I said, through pretty much Saturday. For central Newfoundland, you're looking at some sunshine in the mix, better chance of just a few flurries, not necessarily anything too measurable, but western Newfoundland definitely looking at that snow squall activity continuing. For Labrador, it's just going to be cold and calm for the next little bit. Your temperatures will eventually return to seasonal as we head towards the weekend. Our weather photo of the day taken in Bay Roberts. This one, just a beautiful little ocean action there. Thank you for that, Carol. If you have any weather photos that you'd like to share with us, you can do that by sending them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, beautiful shot with the sun hitting off the waves. Lovely. Thank you so much for that, Carol. Well, some nice stretch of weather, though, for Labrador. Cold, but lots of sunshine. I bet it's going to be so
beautiful.
Nice, crisp air.
Yeah, it's the best when it's cold and sunny. That's my favorite weather.
Yeah.
That'll help with the ice formation, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an adjustment for us, for the temperature changing for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.